there's no question. He's saved me from all that, a lot of stuff. So God's in control of everything. But it took cancer for me to realize that. You know, we went to church every Sunday growing up, that type of thing, just like what normal people would do. Sang in the choir with my mom, had a perfectly normal childhood. Going to church until I was probably up in my teens, and then kind of fell away from the church, to no fault of mom and dad, And so, but then mom, she ended up finding out she had cancer when I was a senior in high school. And so my dream was not my dream. God told me what I was going to be doing when I was 13. But I was too young to realize at 13 what he was telling me. And so it was like, after mom got cancer, I was like, well, she always wanted me to go to college. I'm like, I'm not, I got to be here for you, But what God told me that I was going to be doing when I was 13 is what I did. God wanted me to be a lineman. Okay. So I got on the list of going to lineman school, and I was 86th on the list, and they only took 16. And they called me the day school started, and they were like, if you want in, you need to be here tomorrow. I'm like, there's no way. Well, I had to call my boss at the time. I was working, had to quit. So then I could go to school and still travel to school to Manhattan. And then during my on-the-job training at Platte Clay, she was getting worse. We knew it was, inevitable, what was coming. And yeah, got the call when I was at work for Platte Clay. And so jumped in the truck, went home, and then it's like, why her? Why'd you take her? Why'd you take her from me? But then I kind of held it against him. I held it against God doing that. And just because I was young, naive, vulnerable, however you want to say it, and I turned to alcohol. And then I thought, by the grace of God, literally, I thought I had turned the corner. About a couple years later, my dad ended up getting remarried. That was a little hard, but then God showed me that he was happy. And as long as he was happy, as long as he was happy, I was okay with that, And so that went on. They were married about, maybe a year or so. And all of a sudden, Dad has a massive heart attack. And so, matter of fact, I'd just been back home. I was wanting to go bird hunting with him, and he'd had knee surgery. He didn't feel like going. I'm like, okay. So I ended up going bird hunting without him, which he wouldn't admit. It was always the last weekend of bird season. We always went bird hunting together that weekend. It was something we always did. And so I come back Sunday night, go to work Monday morning, and my boss meets me at the back door. I'm like, what's going on? And he said, well, your dad had a heart attack. You need to go back home. So I drove all the way back home, freaking out. This was before cell phones. I'm a little older. So anyway. So I get to the hospital, and they're like, we had to life flight him to Topeka. So now I'm an hour from Topeka. I just drove 2 hours. I could have, whatever. So I ended up driving to Topeka. My sisters were already there, and my stepmom. And they were just doing a bunch of tests and trying to, he'd been gone for too long. There was substantial brain damage. And so, sorry. So being the the youngest of three, I was the executor of the state, the estate. And through listening to the doctors, and he was going to be pretty much a vegetable. He wouldn't have wanted to live like that. So I was 22 and have to make that decision. To pull the plug on your best friend was tough. But it's what he wanted, and I was okay with that. I was at peace with that. And so the good thing was he made it to the end of bird season. Bird season was over January 31st, passed away at midnight, February 1st. So anyway, yeah. So then after that, Terry turned to alcohol again. And it wasn't that I couldn't go a day, 3 days, 5 days. But when I drank, it wasn't good. And then finally, the turning point with that, I wrecked my truck when I was 25. I shouldn't be here. And thank God I didn't hurt somebody else. It was only by the grace of God that he had no idea how fast I was going, fell asleep at the wheel, and rolled my pickup. No seatbelt. Why am I here? Should have been smart enough then to figure that out. So, took a while. So yeah, fast forward. I wish I would have figured it out then. Everybody thinks that they have time to figure that out. And fortunately for me, I now have. And I keep saying it over and over, but it is by His grace I'm here today. So 3 kids later, and we'll fast forward to 2020. And through COVID and all that malarkey, a lot of people were in a state of confusion. Was you could say principalities or government or whoever putting things in your head, you know. So I'm away on a fishing trip with a friend of mine. 4 days, it's hot. I get home, and I probably missed some stuff in there, but I get home from a fishing trip, and I'm looking at the TV, and I'm like, what is going on? My left eye seems like it's blurry. So I tell the wife, and she's like, well, it's probably just you're tired, you know, whatever. So I'm like, okay, well, so I waited a day or two, and then I was sitting there at home again. I'm starting to close one eye and look through the other and whatever, and I'm like, no, there's definitely something blurry. So anyway, week and a half later, I'm being referred to a retina specialist, and he breaks the news to me I have ocular melanoma. Very rare. Like 1 in 1,500 people in the whole United States maybe get this a year. So the doctor says, well, I can refer you to Philadelphia. It's the main place. It's the main eye doctor for this type of thing, or I can do the procedure. So I'm on my way home. My daughter ended up going with me. My oldest daughter, Easton, ended up going with me to that appointment for whatever reason. And I think she thought maybe with all the tests I couldn't drive or whatever. So anyway, I ended up telling her what the doctor told me. One thing I learned through that whole deal, other than trust in the Lord, was don't look it up on your phone, because you're gonna die in days. So, scare factor. Anyway, so I'm on my way home, and I call Tara and I tell her, and we get home, and matter of fact, when I get home from that appointment, this was the first place I came to. And everybody was here. And I'll never forget, when I come around that corner, Tracy was looking at me. Stone cold. He looked right at me, and at that time I didn't know what to think, you know, what was going on, because it was like, felt like it was mass chaos. And he just looked at me and he goes, "You're gonna be fine. I know it. I already know you're gonna be fine." And I'm like, oh wow. So that kind of set the tone for me. In my journey. In my journey to seek Him. And then I think back, and it's like, guy, idiot. You know, what are you thinking? I've given you all these signs throughout your whole life, and you're still here. And it only took you 51 years. to wake up. And I think about that every day. But God already knows. As it was put to me once. Man, I got to knock this off. God, God already knows your dash. (1968) to whenever he says. And it took me a few months to get past that fact and to know through coming to Tracy's shop he knows every hair on your head. So anyway, I'll knock this off here in a minute and I'll get through it. So anyway, I'll go have a procedure in Philadelphia after praying about it. My other favorite brother-in-law, Jeff, went with me to downtown Philadelphia to have the eye procedure done, which is just a radiation thing to shrink the tumor and kill it. And so go have the procedure. Got to hang out with Jeff and spend some quality time in a motel for 5 days. And without leaving because of COVID. And yeah, so it was awesome. We learned a lot about each other being hooked up in a motel for 5 days. You know? And so a lot of praying, you know. When did my procedure, they were able to take a biopsy of it. And so when we got back from Philadelphia, it became kind of a running joke at home. I would come just for something to do. I was coming to the barbershop. Well, it wasn't to get my hair cut. It was to get full of the Lord from Tracy. And so it kind of became a running joke at home. I'd say, hey, I'm gonna run down and see Tracy. Or I'd tell her, I'm gonna run down and get my hair cut. And she'd just look at me and smile, because she knew better. And then she'd finally say, well, didn't you get it cut last week? Well, you know where I'm going. She'd be like, yeah. Okay. Right here in this building, a friend of ours was coming. Jeff called me, brother-in-law Jeff, the one that took me to Philadelphia. And, you know, at that time, before we knew what any of the results were, or anything from my biopsy and blah, 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 Jeff wanted me to come down to the shop, which his office was right across the hallway from this shop at the time. And he said, when I walked in, I had a feeling I knew what it was about. And he said, I have a friend that I want him to pray over you, lay hands on you, whatever. In the history of my being, I had never had anybody do that before. And I thought, okay, hey, what do you got to lose, right? Everything to gain. So I thought for a minute I was going to be a little weirded by it, but after we talked about it and he was going to do it, it was pretty powerful. Very, very powerful moment. My wife didn't even know I was coming down to the shop after work. So she had no clue. And he did. He laid hands on me and basically spoke it out of me that I was going to be just fine and to give it to God, and He's going to take care of it. So I got home, and it was probably after 5 o'clock because I'm normally home before 4:30, and I went in and sat down on the couch, and I was just kind of sitting there, and my wife came in, and she goes, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "You got home from work a little late." I'm like, "Yeah." And so I told her what had happened. And we both had a little bit of anxiety, you know, it's totally normal to have that. And so I told her what had happened here at the shop. And she said, "Just like 10, 15 minutes ago?" I said, "Yeah." And she started crying. I said, "Why? I said, "Why are you getting upset?" She said, "Oh my gosh." She goes, "I was jogging, working out." And she said, "It was like it stopped me in my tracks." And she said, "I just kind of went numb and all my anxiety was gone." And it floored me. I'm like, wow, which even opened my eyes even more how powerful the power of prayer is. And if you believe in the conviction. Behind all that. And so anyway, as we, and I'm not talking about just myself, my wife and I both, and our kids, have turned to Him, turned to Jesus. It has been awesome. I can't think of any other word. I've had certain times where I feel things that I would have never felt before. I can't explain it. If there was an addiction if there was an addiction that was okay to have, I like it. Because when He's running through your veins, you know it. And it's very powerful. So, my life has been much easier because I don't let you can only control what you can control. But when God's in control, you're good. You're going to be fine. If you just give it to Him to take care of. There's been so many things that happen in me and my wife's life. Certain things that we both have just, we just got to let Him take care of it. And it ultimately gets taken care of. And I'm talking anything from my anxiety about the eye cancer and all that, her anxiety. Just, all you got to do is let Him take care of it, and He'll take care of it. It can be that simple if you just let it happen. So once I finally started pursuing Him more, or saying yes, or be all in, if you will. The Bible says, I look back now and it's like the Bible says we all have trials and tribulations. And my goodness, how much easier they are with Him. Than without Him. So, yeah, that's all I got.